Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Tonight we delve into a crisis that not only shakes the foundations of Washington, D.C., but reverberates across the globe. This is not just another political standoff or a fleeting headline. This is a moment that will be studied for years to come, a turning point that could redefine the very nature of American governance and its role on the world stage. At the heart of this turmoil lies a test of the core principles that have guided American democracy for centuries. The ideals of checks and balances, the separation of powers, and the rule of law are all being put to the ultimate test. A fiscal meltdown within a key U.S. agency is spiraling out of control, threatening to ignite a constitutional showdown with consequences that extend far beyond America's borders. The world's financial markets, diplomatic relationships, and even the stability of allied nations hang in the balance as this crisis unfolds. The world watches with bated breath as a president, determined to fulfill a controversial campaign promise, finds himself locked in a dramatic confrontation with his own government. This is a battle not just of policy, but of power, testing the very limits of presidential authority. At the center of this storm is ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, now teetering on the brink of financial collapse. The agency's resources have been stretched to the breaking point by an unprecedented crackdown on immigration, leaving its future, and the fate of thousands, uncertain. This crisis raises urgent questions that demand answers from every corner of society, lawmakers, citizens, and international observers alike. How did we arrive at this critical juncture? What decisions, missteps, or forces led us here? And most importantly, what are the far-reaching consequences of this moment for the nation and the world? The uncertainty is palpable. For millions of Americans, the crisis is not just a matter of politics. It's a question of national identity, of values, and of the future they will inherit. A president's campaign promise, once a rallying cry, now threatens to upend the delicate system of checks and balances that has kept the nation's democracy resilient through centuries of challenge and change. Critics warn that these actions represent an unprecedented assault on constitutional norms, pushing the boundaries of executive power and raising alarms about potential violations of international law. In the coming moments, we will break down the facts, hear from key players on all sides of the debate, and examine the potential fallout, both immediate and long-term. This is more than a headline. It is a defining moment for the machinery of government and the principles that have guided the United States for generations. The decisions made now will shape the nation's trajectory for decades, influencing not only domestic policy, but America's standing in the world. The crisis is here, and the choices made in these tense days will echo through history, affecting not just those in power, but every citizen and future generation. The stakes could not be higher. In this moment of uncertainty, clarity is not just important, it is essential. Join us as we seek to understand the forces at play, the risks at hand, and the future that hangs in the balance. To grasp today's crisis, we must revisit the start of President Trump's second term. The administration embarked on a constitutional revolution, reshaping the balance of power. Moves like ending birthright citizenship and impounding funds signaled a push for expanded presidential authority. The administration dismantled federal agencies and wielded tariff authority aggressively. Constitutional litigator David French sees these actions as a coordinated attack on the U.S. Constitution. The ICE funding crisis stems from this belief in operating with autonomy, disregarding congressional authority. The philosophy, the president's mandate justifies decisive action, even if it sidesteps the legislative process. This aggressive posture has collided with federal budgeting realities, creating a perfect storm. At the heart of this escalating crisis is a relentless White House directive, one that has fundamentally reshaped the nation's approach to immigration enforcement. The administration's orders have set in motion a sweeping campaign, the likes of which the country has rarely seen in modern times. This is not just a policy shift, it's a massive, coordinated crackdown on undocumented immigrants, with ICE agents deployed in unprecedented numbers across cities and towns nationwide. ICE is now pushed to a breaking point, tasked with the staggering goal of arresting 3,000 immigrants every single day. The sheer scale of this operation is unlike anything the agency has faced before. This ambitious target has consumed nearly all of ICE's resources, overwhelming staff and creating an unsustainable situation where agents are forced to work around the clock, often with little support or rest. Nationwide raids have surged, leading to detention facilities overflowing far beyond their intended capacity. The result is a humanitarian crisis, with detainees living in cramped, often unsafe conditions. The cost of detaining such large numbers of individuals has skyrocketed, straining ICE's already limited budget and forcing the agency to make difficult choices about where to allocate funds. The focus has shifted dramatically from targeted enforcement of high-priority cases to a wide-ranging dragnet, sweeping up thousands and deeply impacting immigrant communities, many of whom now live in constant fear. Agents are stretched thin, morale is plummeting, and resources are being diverted from critical investigative functions, leaving other important cases neglected. The directive was ultimately a political decision, made at the highest levels of government, with little regard for the practical or financial realities faced by those on the ground. The administration's desire for a high-impact, headline-grabbing policy has collided head-on with the harsh limits of the federal budget, exposing deep flaws in the planning and execution of this crackdown. In the end, the crisis was predictable, setting ICE on a collision course with insolvency and leaving both the agency and the communities it polices in a state of uncertainty and turmoil. The financial fallout of this crackdown is now a harsh reality. ICE is $1 billion over budget, threatening its ability to function. DHS has shifted funds to keep ICE afloat, but it's a temporary fix. To continue operations, DHS needs another $2 billion, which it lacks. The daily cost of enforcement has rapidly consumed ICE's budget. Officials face tough choices, neglecting other national security areas. The crisis highlights a disconnect between policy ambitions and financial realities. A presidential directive can't create money. Fiscal discipline is essential. The deficit represents a planning failure and disregard for fiscal discipline. The budget isn't just bent, it's broken. Facing a financial crisis, the Trump administration opts for a high-stakes gambit. The White House pressures Congress for a $75 billion funding bill for ICE. This isn't a simple request. It's a demand for a long-term blank check. President Trump threatens a national emergency if Congress doesn't act. Such a declaration allows fund reallocation, bypassing Congress. This strategy forces Congress to choose between compliance or a constitutional crisis. The administration holds fiscal stability hostage to achieve its goals. The ICE budget crisis has sparked rare bipartisan concern in Washington. Lawmakers from both parties express alarm over fiscal recklessness and executive overreach. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy criticizes DHS for ignoring budgetary limits. Republicans like Representative Mark Amodei voice unease over potential Anti-Deficiency Act violations. This law prohibits spending money not appropriated by Congress. Senior Republicans discussing this law signals a fundamental worry about the rule of law. Allowing an administration to ignore its budget sets a dangerous precedent. It undermines the appropriations process, Congress's primary tool to control the executive. Bipartisan alarm suggests the president's gambit may face resistance even from allies. The crisis is compounded by a troubling lack of transparency from the White House. The administration has stopped public disclosure of federal budget dispersals. This makes it difficult for lawmakers and the public to track spending. The administration delays fund dispersal for other programs, creating a financial cushion. This tactic disrupts government services and represents executive overreach. The lack of transparency undermines open and accountable governance. Experts warn of the long-term dangers of the administration's actions. The ICE funding meltdown is a symptom of eroding constitutional separation of powers. The administration's actions are seen as an assault on the legal framework of democracy. Declaring a national emergency unlocks immense power with minimal oversight. These powers, intended for genuine crises, are now weaponized for political purposes. Constitutional litigator David French sees a coordinated attack on the U.S. Constitution. The real danger lies in the precedent being set, altering the balance of power. The crisis is a test case, potentially weakening the legislative branch. We stand at a pivotal moment in our nation's history, a crossroads that extends far beyond the debates over budgets and the complexities of immigration enforcement. The choices made now will echo for generations, shaping the very fabric of American democracy. A single sweeping policy directive has thrust ICE into a billion-dollar deficit, straining resources and igniting fierce debate over priorities and accountability. The financial crisis is not just a number on a ledger, it's a reflection of deeper tensions within our government. In response, the administration has chosen a path of brinkmanship, demanding an urgent bailout from Congress while simultaneously threatening to take unilateral action if their demands are not met. This high-stakes standoff has sent shockwaves through the halls of power. Alarm bells are ringing from both sides of the aisle, as lawmakers recognize the grave danger posed by unchecked executive authority. The specter of executive overreach looms large, raising fundamental questions about the balance of power. Legal experts and constitutional scholars warn that we may be witnessing a deliberate attempt to sidestep the rules that have long safeguarded our democracy. The very principles that underpin our system of government are being tested. The lack of transparency surrounding these decisions only deepens the sense of unease. Behind closed doors, critical choices are being made, leaving the public in the dark and fueling concerns about accountability and oversight. In the coming days, the strength of our nation's checks and balances will be put to the ultimate test. Will our institutions hold firm, or will they bend under the weight of political pressure? Now more than ever, citizens must stay vigilant, informed, and engaged. It is up to all of us to hold our leaders accountable, to demand transparency, and to ensure that our voices are heard in the halls of power. The power of the purse and the rule of law are not just abstract concepts. They are the essential guardrails that protect our freedoms and define what it means to live in a free society. The outcome of this moment will not only define this presidency, but will also shape the future of American democracy for years to come. The stakes could not be higher.